What's going on? This Theo Gremminger, aka the OG Fantasy, back at it. We're talking a little bit of Week 17 defensive streamers, and really, we're looking at this as early Week 17 defensive stashes. Maybe you have a great defense. Maybe you've got the Buffalo Bills set to play the New England Patriots in Week 17, and you're like, I don't even need to worry about this. Why am I even watching this video? Well, you can still prevent the team you're going to play from having an outstanding option. So a few kind of defenses that are going to be absolutely easy must start defenses in Week 17. Buffalo Bills, we just mentioned them, smash spot. They're already double-digit favorites. They're probably going to end up being like 13-point favorites, 12.5-point favorites over Bailey Zappi and the New England Patriots. You got the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns are going to play the New York Jets on Thursday evening. They're already like 6-point favorites against Zach Wilson and the Jets. That's a smash spot for Cleveland. Then you got to look at the Kansas City Chiefs, 7.5-point favorites. Cincinnati, tricky team, but Jamar Chase is banged up. If Jamar Chase misses, they're a lot easier to defend. So those three are kind of like right there for you. But Dallas, who we've been using all year long, goes up against Detroit. That's a tricky one. Detroit can put a lot of pressure on opposing defenses. Not sure I'd want to go with Dallas in championship week. And two other defenses who are top 4 in scoring right now, the Miami Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens, they go head to head as well. And Vegas has that total at like 47.5 points already. So if you want to bet the Christmas Eve Miami Baltimore total, it's like almost 48 points. Not exactly defensive fantasy friendly. So let's look at a couple of defenses that you can stash that I think are going to be strong plays for you. And we're going to look at some of these future lines and try to justify them. But the number one stash, and this is one team that I also think is a fun streamer this week in week 16, is the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos, we got to remember it's a weekly game because they got shredded against Detroit last week, but they're 6-point favorites in week 17, and the total is only 38 points. So you're talking about a Denver defense who has turned over their opponents a lot this year. You take away, it's funny because you take away the Miami game out of the perception of Denver, and their defense has been a lot better. And last week, Detroit, that game got away from them. But I really think that they're going to get a lot of momentum this week with a big matchup. And then next week, they get to host Easton Stick and the LA Chargers. So go ahead and stash yourself some Denver Broncos defense. Another defense I really like for next week, the game total is a little bit higher, but I love the Indianapolis Colts defense. Indianapolis is one of the best teams in the NFL at getting to opposing quarterbacks. And next week in week 17 in championship week, Aiden O'Connell and the Las Vegas Raiders come into town. The Colts are 3-point favorites. The total's like 43. I think Indianapolis is going to turn Aiden O'Connell over. I think they're going to put a lot of pressure on him. Indianapolis is playing for their playoff life, and that's a game that they've got circled that they've got to win. Another defense that you're going to want to stash if those two are taken, then I'm going to look to stash the Chicago Bears defense. This is a defense that if you watched any of my other defensive videos, you know how much I love this Bears defense. And I love them this week against Arizona. They're like 4-point favorites in Chicago in week 16. And then in week 17, they're hosting Taylor Heineke and the Atlanta Falcons. The total is only 37, and Chicago is 3-point favorites. When you start looking at the defenses that have had the most interceptions and the most sacks over the last 4 weeks, Chicago is right up there. Chicago is a smash play and a great team for you to stash for next week. One team that was not in my article, but makes for a really fun defensive streamer for week 17, if you need them, is the Seattle Seahawks. And I completely overlooked them for week 17. I discussed them as a team you could use if you're in a jam this week in week 16. But in week 17, Seattle is hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. You have Mason Rudolph behind center. And in Seattle, Seattle is favored by 3.5 or 4 points. The total's only like 40. So Seattle is in a very, very good spot. Then we also have to take a look at the low-hanging fruit. You know it. You know I'm going to say it. We got to find whoever Carolina's playing. And next week they're playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that's like a smash spot for Jacksonville. This actually could be a game where the game completely gets away from Carolina. And Vegas is telling you that. It's a 39-point total or 38.5-point total. And Jacksonville is somewhere around an 8-point favorite. So they're basically telling you Carolina is not even going to score. Carolina struggles to score anyway. Jacksonville is a smash spot in week 17. Then we've also got to take a look at if all of those teams are rostered, you can go with the LA Rams. And last night, they got up huge on the New Orleans Saints. Of course, New Orleans scored a couple in the fourth quarter to make the score a little bit closer. And it ended up being a closer scoreline than kind of how much in control the Rams really were for most of the game. But the Rams are on the road in New York, and they are 6-point favorites, and the total is only 40.5. So they're really telling you that the Rams are going to smoke the Giants next week. The Rams are a red-hot team. The Rams are headed towards the playoffs. New York has Philadelphia this week. There's going to be a lot of effort. That's a game where you got the NFC East divisional game. New York's going to go for it, but that's a really tough one for them. I also add in the fact that LA has had an extra 3 days coming off of that Thursday game. It's almost like getting a mini bye week. They're going to be fresh. They're going to be ready to get right at Tommy Cutlets and the New York Giants. Again, I'm Theo Gremminger. You can find all my written work at Player Profiler. You can find all the videos I've done like this. If you want a little more in-depth defense, we went real deep this week. If you're still looking for a week 16 streamer, I got you covered. Check out my sleepers video. Check out First Class Fantasy. Check out press coverage. Check out the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast, press coverage, Dynasty Life. We're everywhere. And check out the written work over at playerprofiler.com. I'm going to drop an article next week updating some of these options for week 17, but go ahead and grab them before your league mates do, and consider grabbing 2 of them, especially if you're in a great spot right now and you look like you're going to win this week. Let's get it. Let's have an awesome Christmas, awesome New Year's, and let's win some fantasy titles.